Hello everyone, it's Natasha from Treasure Books. So in this step-by-step tutorial, we will be creating these journals together. So this journal, to be exact, we will be creating together. So I will be sharing my instructions and step-by-step process with you guys, as I usually do, so that you will know exactly what needs to be done and the way that it needs to be done along the way. Okay, so I'm just going to show you first basically what it is, and then we will continue with the project. So I've used the cereal box and I have tried to create an old leather look. So can you see these beautiful ridges and texture here? I think it looks like really old leather. So that's the kind of thing I was trying to achieve, and I think I have managed. It's a very, very easy technique, as you will see. In this step-by-step process, we will do everything from scratch. We will construct the cover, we will do the binding, the embroidery, the binding, the sewing and the signatures, the tassel, attaching the tassel, the book plate, pages, everything is done on cameras. So this project is part of a collaboration with Barbara from 49 Dragonflies. I will leave her link down below so you can go and have a look at her interpretation of the project. So as you know, it's Thanksgiving holiday in America, which is all about being thankful and grateful for the things that we have in our lives. Barbara and I have decided to do a project using junk only. So she is going to do some page spreads with just junk only, and she's actually very, very good at doing spreads, and that's one of my weaknesses, and it's definitely her strength. I have tried something like that in this journal. I mean, this is all made from junk, but I have already started decorating my journal and I started working in it, as I will sort of show a little bit of it in the video. But as you will see here, most of these pages are all junk. So without further ado, let us begin. Okay, so we need to begin by making our cover. So the things that you are going to need is your cereal box. So I'm using this quite rather large cereal box, and that allows me to have a large sort of cardstock part that I can then fold in half to make my cover very sturdy. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I need to cut this cereal box to size. So we want to cut it, this is approximate. You can use whatever measurements you want. These are just what I'm going to do, and if you want to follow along, then you can use these measurements. So I'm going to cut 12.5 by 6.5 inches, and I need 2 of those panels, and then we'll be folding them in half, and that will give us our front and our back of the journal, and then we need to do the spine. All right, so that's what I'm starting with. Okay, so I just wanted to cut the 2 panels. I didn't measure anything yet, but I just wanted to cut them into sort of larger panels. So then now I will measure the size that I want, and then I'll trim it down to that size. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to have at least one straight edge, so then I can use that straight edge to make all my other edges straight. Because once you fold in half, it will matter, you need to have straight edges. So I've got one straight edge here, and then I'll be able to fix these ones. Okay, 12.5 by 6.5. So I actually folded, I didn't cut this to size yet. I folded it in half first, and then it'll be easier to cut it into size. Okay, so I have got this is 12.5, and I just need to cut this side so it's 6.5. Let's trim it down to 6.5. Okay, so that's one done. I'm going to do the same to the second one. So I'm just going to do it like this. So now you just want to make sure that they're exactly the same, because one of them is going to be the front and one of them is going to be the back, and then we'll have the spine in the middle. So you want to make sure that they're exactly the same height, and you want to make sure that they're the same width as well. So we are going to be painting on this side because I'll be gluing this side, and I feel like glue is going to hold on to this a little bit better, whereas here we will be using gesso, so paint will have something to stick onto. So that's my reasoning. All right, so before we continue with the painting, let's do the spine first, and then we're free to go on and do some painting on these. So we need a piece that's 2.5 by 6.5. First thing I'm going to do is get me some straight edges, so I might start with the top, and then I'll measure my, just need to get some straight edges. Okay, so now I'm free to measure. All right, so we need 2.5 by 6.5. Let's do 6.5 first. Okay, so the reason why I do my straight edges first is so that if you have a wonky edge, like this one's not straight, and you use that to align, then all of the edges will be wonky. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know how else to explain it, but I always start off with having at least one edge straight, and then I can use that to have all of my other edges straight. Okay, so now we're going to do this one. Before we proceed, I need to double check that they all are the same height, because you don't want the spine being smaller or larger than your... So here we go, same height. Here we go, so that's the same height. So now I'm going to also fold this one in half. This one might be a little bit trickier because a little bit smaller, so just slowly. I really want them to line up properly. Okay, that's about right. And the next thing we're going to do is glue on some scrunched tissue paper. Okay, so this is what I'm using. It's just tissue paper that comes in with your shoes. When you buy shoes, inside the boxes, you know, lots of things come with this tissue paper, and they scrunch it up and put it in boxes. So that is what I use. So it's already scrunched up, but I scrunch it up a little bit. If you don't have tissue paper like this, you can use napkins. You just need to make sure that you use a very thin layer. There are other things that you can use if you don't have the tissue paper. All right, so I'm just going to move this out of the way until I'm finished gluing. So I am using PVA glue. Someone will ask, so it's PVA glue, mixed with a little bit of water. So I just pour the PVA glue in here, and I mix it with a little bit of water so that I get, you can see that it's runny, but it's not like extremely runny. It still has, you know, a little bit of goo to it. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is just cover. It doesn't have to be completely covered. And by the way, I protected my desk with cereal box liner, so you can use whatever you have, but protect your desk. Okay, so I have popped this down, just a bit of glue, and then I put this on top, and I want to get creases, so I don't want to smooth it out. I want to have lots of creases. I don't like touching the glue, so I'm just going to put my gloves on. Okay, so I've just popped this down with lots of creases, and you will see that there's lots of air bubbles in there. So just up close, lots of creases, and these are air bubbles all in here. So what we're going to do now is really going to soak this up with some glue and make sure that there are no air bubbles, because if that air bubble dries, if that part with the air bubble dries, that will pop or open and then start to peel as you use your journal. So you really want to make sure that everything is covered with glue. Okay, so as I'm applying the glue, I'm using a very light hand. I don't want to apply a lot of pressure because that's going to rip my napkin. So I'm really being quite careful here. And that's why I think if you have tissue paper, it's better to use tissue paper rather than a napkin, because tissue paper seems to be a little bit stronger than napkin. So, okay, over here I have ripped it. I'll show you. I ripped it there. So that's no big deal, because you just grab a little piece, but you don't want to have any straight edges because that's going to show. So just a little piece like that, you scrunch it up, and then you just put it right on top of the rip. And that's going to blend in seamlessly, and you won't even be able to tell that it's there. So if you do have a rip, it doesn't really matter because you can fix it up. Okay, so now at this stage where everything is soaked, I just like to double check that there's no air bubbles. And here's another rip here. And I mean, you can have layers of this. I used to do little layers of little pieces like this, but it just is a lot more work. So I'd much rather just apply one large piece and then be done with it. All right, so now that I'm pretty sure everything is nice and covered in glue, I lift it up gently, and I want to check. So I sort of tilt it this way a little bit to make sure that there's no air bubbles. I'm making sure. So it's hard to show on camera, and I'm pretty happy with that. So now what we need to do is we need to leave this, and we need to wait for it to dry. So I'm going to put this aside, and I'm going to do my other two panels. So we need to do the other panel, the spine. And then once they're all dry, we will go to next step, which is applying a little bit of gesso over the top and then applying the paints. So I'm just going to pop this away to dry. So I just wanted to say, if you see a bubble, then you just tap it out. Okay, so now my bits and pieces are all completely dry. And the next step before we continue on with applying gesso is I'm just going to cut these extra bits off. And yes, you can rip this off when it's still wet, but I like to make sure that all of my edges are nice and even and there's no bits sticking out or folding over. That's why I let it dry first, and then I proceed to cut the excess. Okay, so the next step is to coat everything with gesso. So I wrote optional there because I'm not sure if it's if you absolutely must coat it with gesso, but I do, because I'll just show you gesso, because it's a primer for paint, for acrylic paint, which comes next, and I just want to make sure that none of that paint is going to be coming off. So what I've done is I protected the underneath with some scrap paper, And now I'm just coating with gesso, and it's also nice for this white gesso to be showing through once I put my paint on, because I won't be covering it completely with brown paint. I want these white bits to show through, and you will see that. You'll see what I mean when we do the next step, when we actually add some paint. Okay, so I'm just going to finish putting gesso onto all of my pieces, and then I will let this dry, and then we will continue with the next step. Okay, so that's all covered with gesso now, as you will see. I'm going to leave this to dry, and then I'll come back, and then we will continue with the paint. Okay, so everything is nice and dry, and the next step is to apply some paint. So first I'm going to use brown. This is just a cheap brown acrylic paint, nothing special. And then I'm going to use some orange. It can be any, it doesn't have to, I happen to have this Delusions paint, but it can be any paint that you have, and it doesn't have to be brown and orange. You can choose whichever paint you like, but this is what I'm going to do. So I just need a little bit of paint here. Okay, the plan is to cover this, but not completely. I want some white showing through, so I am just gradually going to apply some paint like this. So I only apply a little bit of paint on my brush, and I'm trying to make, you can see brush strokes. I'm going to try and minimize the brush strokes. So I'm sort of going in all different directions. And what's really cool about this is that there's all this texture, as you can see, these little ridges from that tissue paper that I stuck down. Can you see those little ridges sticking up? I really like that effect. So okay, so I am quite happy with this. If I feel like I need more brown paint, I can always add a little bit more when I'm adding my second paint, which is going to be just some spaces of the orange paint. So I think I'm going to leave this as it is, and I'm going to paint my other two pieces, the spine and the other cover, and then we'll come back and we will go for the second step, which is using the second paint. Okay, so just check your pieces, because you want them to look the same. You don't want the front cover to have more saturation of brown color than your back cover. So, I mean, maybe you do, but if you don't want them to look exactly the same, just put them side by side and just check that they have approximately the same amount of color. And now for my spine. Okay, if there are some spaces where you not only need a little bit of color in that spot, you just kind of, do that rather than brush like that. I hope that makes sense. Okay, I'm quite happy with that. They all look quite similar. I might even add some more brown. I'll see how I go. But for now, I'm just going to leave it and let it dry, and then I will go in with my orange paint. Okay, so this is nearly completely dry. I just now want to go in with my orange. So what I'm going to do, I don't want to have a whole lot of orange on my brush. I only want to have a little bit. So this is a really cheap brush that I'm using. So hopefully it's going to work. But I want to put my color just here and take off the extra color off my brush. And now I'm going to start applying a little bit of orange here and there. just like that. Maybe in some white spots. And just do it little by little. It doesn't have to be all over. You want to have some completely brown color. You want to have some orange here and there. Or, you know, whichever second color you're using. You could be, you know, it could be any two complementary colors, such as, let's say, purple and yellow, for example. If you have a purple background and then you're adding a little bit of yellow accents here and there. You can even use your finger to apply, but I'm using this brush just because I want just a little bit of color here and there. And this is a very rough brush. I'm not an expert in this, but if you use maybe a very smooth brush, it might leave uniform splotches, I guess. And I'm just doing just putting it on wherever I feel like it might need. So I think this area here is looking a little bit too orange, so I don't know if I can maybe go back in with just a little bit of my brown that I still have on my brush, because I admit I didn't leave it to dry. I just kind of continued to the next step. So now you can sort of decide, oh, maybe this is too much white, I want to cover it. This is your playing around time. This is where you follow your instinct. You'll know when it's enough. You'll see. In all honesty, you can completely cover it with brown. You don't need to have the white spots. I just like to have the white spots, because there's also a third step that I'm going to go in to do. So I really like this look, but if you don't like the white spots, then obviously you can just completely cover it with brown or with whichever color you're using, and then add your accents. Okay, I'm going to leave this one to dry. I'll do my other two pieces, and then we'll come in with the third paint. So I just want to put them side by side to make sure that they are uniform. And it seems to me like this one has just a little bit more white spots. So I'm just going to go in with some more brown. Okay, and this is my spine. I'm quite happy with that, and I'm going to leave it as it is. Maybe just a little bit more brown here. I have minimal color on my brush. It's much easier to add than it is to take away. All right, I'll leave this to dry just a little bit, and then we'll come back and we will continue with the third step. Okay, now that that's all dry, for the final step in this painting section, I'm going to just apply a little bit of gold accents just all over the colors, the cover. So what I'm using is this Gilda's paint wax. It's a wax-based medium used to highlight metal, wood, ceramics, etc., etc. So I happen to have this. If you don't have this, you can just use a little bit of gold paint. This one's antique gold, so just on your finger a little bit and just highlight here and there. You can use some glitter paint, like gold glitter paint, to put just in some sections. So whatever you have in hand, don't go out rushing, you know, to buy stuff that you think you must have that you don't have, because you don't really need it. I happen to have this because when I first started, I used to think I need everything, so I used to go and get everything that I would see people use on videos, but I don't do that anymore. So whatever you have, you can make do. So basically, I'm just applying a little bit on my finger, and now I'm just going to just play around and just apply some accents. So I go over these raised edges. So I'm going to see if I can show you up close. So you can see these raised bits here, and when I apply a little bit of this, it makes it stand out even more. I hope that you can see what I mean. So I'm just going to apply it in little sections here and there. and then I will see if perhaps I need to add more brown paint, or you know, if I need more of something else. We'll see. So I'm really liking how this looks. It kind of looks like really old leather, and I really, that's the kind of look I was going for, and I really like this. Perhaps I could have done with less white areas, but it's actually coming up more white than it looks in real life, these white sections. So when I look at it on camera, it looks quite white in those areas, but in real life it doesn't. So I'm just going to leave it as it is. I'm not going to apply any more brown paint. So let's compare it to what we had before. So this is how it looks before we added those, a little bit of gold. And now I want to make them look the same, of course. I'm going to do the same here. So I'm quite happy with how this is looking. I really like it. So I'm going to leave it as that. Okay, so just for demonstration purposes, I am going to do my spine with the gold paint that I've got, just to show you that it can be done. Well, I hope that it can be done. So I just need a tiny little bit. That's too much. So I just put a little bit of paint, and then very gently I want to apply just to the ridges. And then we can put them side by side and see if there's a difference. Okay, let's see. This is how it looks with the paint. So I just applied a little bit of paint here and there, and let's compare it to this section, and I think it looks fine either way. So you don't need specialized products or anything like that. You can just get cheap paint from $2 shops, and you can make do with what you've got. Okay, so the next step now, after this is all done, you would wait for it to dry. And I am going to wait for this to dry before I do it, but because I want it to dry overnight, I'm just going to demonstrate what I would do next. So the next thing I want to do is glue these two together. So I will apply some glue on the inside, here and there, and then I'm going to place this under something heavy, and I'll leave it overnight to dry. So I'm going to use my Boyle craft glue. This is acetone based glue. It's very quick drying, but it doesn't wrinkle your paper projects. You can just use PVA glue, craft glue, anything you've got. I wouldn't use a glue stick, but because we will be binding these together with some thread, even glue stick will do, I guess. So that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm just going to pretend that I'm gluing it, but I won't actually because it's not dry yet. But I will apply glue just on the edges like this, and on the inside like this. I will close it shut, make sure there's no seepage of glue around, and then I will put it under something heavy, some books or a box or something like that, and I'll leave it overnight to dry, or you know, for a few hours, I guess. Let it dry. Once it's dry, we are going to continue with the next step. All right, so I'll come back when this is ready. Okay, my 3 pieces are now glued and dry. So I just left them overnight under something very heavy, and they are completely glued together. What we're going to do next is some binding and embroidery and decorating. So here's my little notes over here. Some of the parts are very hard for me to write down and explain, so if anything's not making sense, it will make sense as you watch me do it. I just want to actually show you what we're trying to achieve. This is what I've done and what I'm going to show you how to do. You most certainly do not have to do any of this. You can do it any way that you want, but this is what we are going to do together. So first of all, the first thing we need to do is embroider. I don't know if I'm using the right word. I don't know if this is called embroidering. I'm not an expert at this, so I'm just going to call it embroidering. So this is what we're going to do. First, we need to embroider these 3 sides, and then we're going to bind all 3 pieces together. So for this step, you don't need the spine. We're not going to be using the spine. Okay, so the edge where the fold is does not need sewing. Okay, so see this ugly edge here where everything has folded, everything is, you know, visible. That's the part that we're going to sew together. So you want the edges over here to look really neat, if that makes sense, and the ugly edges will be covered with the sewing. So this is what I mean. You find your good edge, that's going to be the next to the spine. So on this side as well, the good edge, that's going to be next to the spine. So we are just embroidering the 3 edges here, and I've drawn a picture, so hopefully I'm making sense. All right, so the next thing is that we need to do is we're going to poke holes around the 3 edges. This is just approximate. I wrote down 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and then you want 1/2 inch apart. I did not measure this when I was poking holes here. I didn't measure anything, but they look quite uniform. So you might want to, if you want to, you know, you have quite a uniform sort of look, you can use a ruler. What you need for this step is a pokey tool, an awl, or you can use, you know, a needle. This is quite a large, thick needle. And you need a needle like this for the embroidering part as well. So anything that can poke holes, that's what you need. And you need to protect your surface. So I'm just using this cutting mat and then a mouse pad. So this is my good fold part, which I will not poke holes into. And now I'm just going to approximately start here. I don't want to measure anything. So I don't want to be too close to my spine, so that's where I started. And then I'm going to go along the lines, and maybe I'll see if I can actually use a ruler. So I want them 1/2 inch apart, and then so that's my hole here, and I'm placing my ruler there, and then I'm just going to follow 1/2 inch apart, and I'll try to stay within the same line. All right, I hope I'm making sense. Here we go. Okay, so here's what happened. I started off using a ruler, and then I really didn't like using a ruler. It was getting in my way. It was annoying me. So then I just got rid of it, and you will see my holes. They're not, you'll see once I start sewing, but they're not at all uniform. I have some, you know, it's not in a straight line. So you'll see that it will still look quite nice, so nothing to worry about if your holes are not in the straight line. Okay, so now that we have poked holes, I'm going to do the other one off camera. So after you've done that, now we're ready to embroider. So you can use anything that you have around the house. So you can use some yarn, maybe not in a black color. You can use some twine, even though this is quite thick, so you might want to just check for thickness. Something like this would look quite good, some of this type of cord. I'm going to use embroidery floss, which is this, and I need to also use quite a large needle. You might want maybe a needle that's a little bit blunt. It has to be quite large so that whatever material you're using can fit through the eye of the needle. So perhaps it doesn't have to be this big, but I'll use this one. In terms of the length, I guess it all depends on how many holes you have. If you have like less holes, then you need less thread. So what I did is I just sort of went around the edges 3 times. Okay, and then I'll double it and then just have a little bit of extra just in case. So I have threaded my needle, and now you want to start on the inside. What I mean by that is you choose which side you like better to be your outside. So I think I like this side better, and I actually poked holes from this side, which means that these ugly raised little bits will be on the inside. Can you see that from poking the holes? So that means this is the inside of my journal, and so that will be the back, because this is the inside. So that means I will be starting on the inside. This is a lot more complicated than it sounds, a lot less complicated than it sounds. It truly is. So we started on the inside, which means that the knot I'm about to make is going to be hidden and it's going to be inside. So now, before I continue, I'm just going to make a knot, a really secure knot. So I'm doing the, I don't know what it's called, double knot, left over right, and then right over left. Left over right, right over left. It took me so long to remember that and to learn how to do it. I have no idea why. But, so that's my knot here. You can leave those pieces long. In this journal, I actually did leave them a little bit long, and I thought maybe I can stick some beads on there or something. So, okay, knot is made. And now, so we started on the inside and we made a knot. So now let's go to the outside and then poking inside. So, and then again you go outside, so the way that this has happened this time around, I started on the inside just to tie that knot on the inside, and then all my other times that I have to sew through, I'm always starting on the outside. So I'm going from the outside in. And then again back to the outside. And then going into the next hole. And now I'm going to speed this up. So I just wanted to say, as you are embroidering this, you can actually embroider little beads like I did on this card. See, they look pretty cool. So that would look quite cool, wouldn't it, on that journal? So the way that you would do the bead thing, you would add a bead here. So then you would add a bead and then go through, add another bead, and then go through, and then the bead will stay there. Okay, I barely have enough thread. I really should have left more, because I still need to tie a knot over here. I will have enough, but oh, I was worried. Okay, so that's the last bit, last hole. All right, so we're finished on the inside, and now I just need to tie a knot and make sure that this stays in place and doesn't go anywhere. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go under this one here and then somehow tie a knot. Let's see. So then I'll go under it, under this one here, and then just knot and keep knotting until I'm happy with the knot. So I think that's all right. So once I actually bind it to the spine, I might tie that in a little bit more. Let's see what I've done over here. So even over here, I've actually tied them a little bit together. So I know that it's difficult to see, but all you need to do really is just tie a knot there and there, and that is one side done. So the next thing I'm going to do is exactly the same thing to this one here. So because the folded edge is sitting over here next to my spine, I am going to embroider these 3 edges, which that means that this is my front cover. This will be the front of the journal, and I'm quite happy. That looks quite good. So I'm going to go off and do that this side, and then I will come back and we will do the binding. All right, I'll see you soon. Okay, so both of my covers are done and ready to go. So now we need to attach them to the spine. And so in the end, we're going to have something that looks like this. The main thing that you need to know is that you need to now poke some holes here, and then you need to have an even number of holes. So we've already started. We've already got 2 holes ready, because we're going to be using the first and the last hole here. We're going to be using that as part of the binding as well. So you need an even number of holes, and you want them to be somewhat evenly spaced out. Don't stress too much if they're not. As you can see in this one, you can see these ones are somewhat evenly spaced, and then this one here is much smaller because I didn't leave enough space. So you can measure, if you want to be exact, the way that you would do it is like this. So you measure the space in between don't measure the cover, measure the space in between the holes. So let's say here I've got, this is 15.5 centimeters. And you would, if you, let's say, want 16 holes, which would make it 18 altogether, because we've got 2 here. And the only reason why I'm saying 16 is because I actually have 16 holes here. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 17, 18. Okay, so that's why I'm saying 16. So it's 15.5 centimeters. 15.5 centimeters divided by 16 holes that we want to create. So that means you would need just under a centimeter for each hole, just under a centimeter of space for each hole. So that's what I'm going to do. But don't stress too much. Like I said, if you know, just before you start punching holes, just maybe mark it with a pen. That's what I'm going to do, just to make sure that you have enough space for an even number of holes. And that's it. That's all you need to keep in mind. So I am going to, because this is the ugly side, as you can see, I'm going to punch holes on from my good side going through that way. So I'm going to do it first on the cover, and then we need to correspond the exact placement of the holes on my spine. So the way that I'm going to do that, this is just for demonstration purposes. So we've got, this is the first hole, so we've got 2 already. Now I haven't got enough space here to do 16, so I'm just going to do whatever I can fit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so then I've got an even number, and then I will need to correspond the exact placements of the holes on the spine. So the way that I'm going to do, I will demonstrate this obviously as I actually do it, but just so you can see visually on a piece of paper here, this is what it would look like. So they just need to correspond, and then we'll do the same for these ones here. We will correspond, we'll do some hole punching here. They need to be the same level, and then we will correspond that to here. Okay, so that's what we need to do with the hole punching. So I'm just going to do, I know you won't be able to see, but I'm just marking, just so I know where I'm going to punch those holes. I'm just marking under, I'm actually marking 9 millimeters. So I've marked where I'm going to punch the holes. I know that you can't see, but I will show you once I punch the holes. I've already made my markings, and you want the distance to be about the same as you did here, so about 1/4 of an inch. It was approximately 1/4 of an inch, so you want the same on the spine as well. So I'm going to go and punch those holes right now. Okay, so the holes are punched. Now let's count. So we'll count these ones too. So 1, 2, 3, 17, 18. So 18 holes. So the main thing is even number of holes. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to align my cover, but I'm going to turn it to the good side so that I can punch the holes again from the outside in. And now I'm just going to go ahead and mark my holes in the same line and approximately, you know, along the same distance. So what did we say? 1/4 from the edge. And now no more measuring needed. I'm just going to use the holes that I've already punched, and I'm going to mark where I'm going to punch holes on my spine. And now I'm going to go ahead and punch the holes, and then I'll do exactly the same for the other two. So I'm just going to use my ruler here to make sure that they're all nice and aligned. I mean, it's not exact science. If it's not perfect, it still works fine, because the first book that I made, I just went for it. I didn't measure anything, and it still looks fine. So now I'm going to punch, poke, whatever the correct terminology is. Okay, so it looks something like this. All of the holes are punched, so this is the inside because this is the ugly part, and that's the outside. Okay. And now we need to do exactly the same on here. Line everything up. So mistake that I did here, I'm just going to go with it. This is my ugly side, but I marked my holes on the ugly side, so now I have to punch the holes through the ugly side, so that it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm going to do it anyway. I could have just marked the holes again from the other side, but I just want to show you a trick. I mean, it doesn't really matter that my ugly side is now in my front, so I can always go over it with my bone folder, just like this, just to hide those holes a little bit, and that fixes the problem. So don't stress too much about the good side and the ugly side. Okay, so that's done. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to bind them together. So again, I'm not sure how much string I need, so I'm going to do, just to be on the safe side, I'm going to do 4 lengths. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then double it up. I think again it depends on how many holes you have and distance between holes and all of that. Okay, let me just get this. All right, so now we're up to binding them together. So here I've got both ends of thread on the inside. Okay, so find the inside of your book. The inside is where you've got your knots, so that's the inside. And the cover, the spine, is the, you know, where the not so beautiful holes are, so that's my inside. Okay, so now you want to thread. We're just going to work with just the one piece first, the front or the back cover, and now I'm just going to thread my needle, and I'm going to go from the outside in on this one here. I've taken that out, so I've got one thread here, and now I'm going to do the same here. So we're going in through that first hole where we've already got the thread in. So we're going to go in And here's what I mean. So we've got both ends of the thread on the inside. And I will have 2 needles on the go. I will have 1 needle for this thread, and I'm going to have another needle for this side. Okay, and I just want to make sure that they are even. Okay. All right, so now we have 2 needles, and now we need to, this is my pathetic drawing of what I meant. So we've got a little loop now happening here. Once that's all tight, it will look like this. And then we've got our 2 threads on the inside. That's what that is supposed to represent. Okay, so now we're just going to crisscross all the way. So I'm going to go down. I'm starting here, or you can start with this one, doesn't matter where, but we're over on this side, and now we're going to go into the spine, into the next hole, into the next available hole on the spine. And now you can do the same from here. You can go this into the next hole, or you can just keep going with the 1 thread. So let's go. Let's do 1 each, because then we'll have to turn this around. You might need to do some tightening as you go. You'll see what I mean in a moment when I turn it around. And as you're going down, make sure that you have an even amount of thread on both sides. Okay, so now we're here, and now I'm going to go from the spine into the cover, into the next hole. So I'm just going to alternate. I'll do one and then I'll do the other, and I'll make my crisscrosses all the way down that way, so then I don't make a mistake and I know exactly where I'm at. Because this is a little bit fiddly, especially when you first begin and you have all these things moving and needles falling out. So now this one is going in here. So we're just making crisscrosses. That's how you decide where it goes next. So you can see here, now I'm going into this hole. And then I'm going to turn it around because my needles are on the other side. So now turn it around, align everything up, tighten it, perfect. And now I want to make my following crisscross, so that means I'm going into this hole. I'm going to pull that through, leave it there, and then I'm going to take this thread and I'm going to make a little crisscross here. And now I'm going to turn everything around. Tighten everything. I'm not tightening it too much because you still want movement when you're opening and closing the book. Okay, so now I'm going to go with this one into the next hole. Leave my needle there, and now I'm going to do this one into the next one. Turn it around. As you go along, it becomes easier. Keep everything aligned, that's the main thing. So now I'm going into this one here. Okay, so I've just moved all the way down. I did little crisscrosses. I let that lead me, the crisscrosses, and I ended up here. So our knots are on the other side. I ended up over here on the inside. So I'm simply, so see how here we've got this thread over here. So we want us to do the same on the bottom. So this side, we're just going to go across to the cover, just like so. And now this one is on the outside, so I can just bring it in like this and then tie a knot on the inside, and that's what I'm going to do. Actually, I lost my needle. Okay, so I'm on the outside, I need to go, and I need to be on the inside, so I'm just going to come in here and go through one of these knots that I've already tied before. So now I am on the inside. It's no big deal. Okay, so now what we're going to do is tie a knot here, and I ended up having too much thread, so but I'd rather have too much than not enough, and I keep all of these bits and pieces anyway. So we're just going to do a double knot, left over right, right over left. And why not? Let's do a triple knot just to be on the safe side. So now these pieces you can leave long, and then you can decorate them and put beads on them. But remember, this is the inside of the book, and that's our one flap, our one cover attached to the spine. And now we're going to do exactly the same thing for my other one. So you just make sure you've got the inside bits, so you know that you're working the right way. Okay, and now I'm going to repeat exactly the same process. So I'm going to speed this up. So when beginning the next one, make sure you begin at this on the same side as this one. So you want to finish down here, which means you begin up here. Okay, so both of my threads are on the inside, and I just want to make sure they are approximately the same. I don't want to have one really long one and one really short one. Okay, let us begin. Okay, so let's do this last one together. So I finished on the outside. Now I want to bring these two pieces in to the inside of the journal. So now I'm just going to connect from this hole to that hole. So I'm just going from here, connecting my spine to the cover over here. Too much threads. And then this one I'm simply just going to bring to the front and then tie these two together. So now I'm just tying some knots. I don't want anything unraveling and falling apart, so I want to make sure everything's tied. Okay, so we have finished the binding. This is the outside of the book. This is how it looks. I think with these bottom ones, what I will do, I'm just going to use, this is just PVA glue, nothing special, and I'm going to put a tiny little bit of glue on the knots. I'll just leave it for a little bit and then cut them off. I decided to cut all of these little bits and pieces off because they are in my way and really annoying, but just know that you have the option of leaving those bits and pieces to string some beads or something like that, decorations onto them, but I'm going to cut them off. So I'm just applying a little bit of glue onto my knots so that it doesn't unravel. I'll let that dry, but I'm going to just go ahead and cut it right off. It will be easier to work with the journal if they're not in my way. So that's what I've done there. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is create a book plate for my cover. I will glue it on later on. So by all means, if you like to skip this step and do the book plate later, everything is time-stamped in this video, so you can jump ahead and come back to certain sections. But I'm going to do the book plate now, just so I have it ready to go. All right, so I'm going to move this out of the way. I will be placing all of these notes side by side again a bit later on if you want to take a screenshot. But for now, I'm just going to move it away so that I have some space. All right, so these are the things I am going to use for my book plate. So I just have a little offcut piece from that cereal box. I have some fabric here. This is muslin fabric, and I'm going to use my orange paint. And I have this old leather jacket sleeve here, so I'm just going to use a little bit of this. So what you want to do is layer some pieces together. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut my very first layer of the muslin. So I just want to cut an approximate size. The idea is to layer a few different bits and pieces together. I think that will be okay. So now I'm going to fray the edges because that always looks a lot better. Once you start making book plates, you will have so many ideas as you're making them. All these new ideas will be popping into your head. I do have a couple of tutorials on book plates already. 2 to be exact, if you wanted to have a look at some other types of book plates that you can make to decorate your journals and your books. But because we're making a junk journal, a true junk journal, I guess I just want to use the things that I have that are not necessarily pretty. Okay, so I have that. Next thing I want to layer is a little bit of this card. So I just want to have straight edges on it. So I'm just going to cut it down with my trimmer. So I think that looks all right. I'm going to go ahead and color this in orange. And then while that's drying, I will continue with my next step. I'm going to give it 2 coats of paint, so I'm going to leave this to the side to dry. And now my next thing that I want to put on is a little bit of this sleeve. And I'm using I've got pinking shears. You can just, it will be nice if you've got those. If not, then just use normal scissors and you can have a straight edge. That will look okay. And now I want to have a piece inside here, and that is going to be a place for me to put to name my journal. So I'm fraying the edges again. So that's a good size. I'm happy with that. And now I'm going to give it a name. I'm just going to name it journal. You can write anything you want on there. You can have art journal, you can have diary, you can have 2020 or your name or dreams or whatever. So I'm going to write journal. Another option is, this is also what I used in one of my tutorials, if you have alphabet stamps, you can stamp journal. That would look quite nice on here, but because that will look definitely a lot better. But because we are doing, you know, a real junky journal, I think I'm just going to write journal rather than use that. So what do we think about that? It's not great. I'm just going to add a second coat of paint. Okay, so I have my 4 pieces ready. Now I'm just going to glue this onto this, but it's actually not dry yet. But I just want to add a little bit of distressing to the edges. Optional, of course. I might do some doodling on it later on when it's completely dry, when it's stuck on the book. So now I'm going to glue this onto that. And now I'm going to glue my leather jacket piece. And now for this bit, I'm not going to glue this down because it might show through, and especially if you are using a stamp, if you glue it down, because I have tried it before, it actually smudges the ink because it's not permanent ink, the one that I have. If you have permanent ink, maybe you won't have problem, but sometimes it can come through on this very thin material. You'll be able to see the glue. So what I'm going to do is I might just staple this on. We are making a junk journal, so who says we can't use staples? So I'm just going to use my little stapler and just staple right through. Make sure it's straight. And there's my little book tag. Oh, so simple, so easy and quick. And it's going to look something like this. I think it looks good. My writing is not the best. This would have looked much better. Let's see. Perfect. But I'm just going to leave it as this. That's going to wait until later on. So the next thing we want to do, if you want to add a tassel on your book, that you want to add something hanging, now is the time to punch a hole in your spine, because once you have your signatures in, it won't be so easy to do. So this will be my front cover, and that means I'm going to punch a hole at the top of my journal, so somewhere in the middle. There we go, hole punched, so I can add threads and bits and pieces onto that later on. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is prepare our pages. So you can go and get pretty much anything that you have lying around. You can get envelopes, magazines, book pages, anything that you have, junk mail coming in, papers from notebooks and things like that. Anything goes. Okay, so I have prepared some papers that I'm going to use, and I'll show you what I've got. I may not use all of these things, but I've just got everything ready. So I've got some catalogs, I've got some envelopes, I've got this really pretty envelope, I've got a paper bag from a shop in Croatia, I've got some offcuts from previous projects that I don't need anymore. This is also a little brochure type thing, and then I've got these destroyed papers I can't do anything with, and then I've got some painty papers that, you know, just some painty sessions with my kids, and then some, this is from a book, and then I've got this printout which is destroyed here. I can't really use anything. So I've got a magazine page, and then papers like this. And then I've got some of this stuff. This is a paper bag I got from a pharmacy. This is a gift bag that I've already was cutting into for a project. I might use something like that. I've got some old calendar pages. This is from last year, I think. And then I've got this bag from post office. So I just have a section in my craft room where I put things that I might use. So I've got this one, perfect little pocket, and then there's a large envelope that some mail came in, and then there's a little piece of wrapping paper that I can't use this for anything, then some butcher's paper, and then I've got painty pages. So this is just pages that I was, you know, either working with my kids, having some fun. This is a page I was using to wipe my brushes off onto, and then I was sticking down baby wipes, and I just created something. Some more painty papers, some more bags. I've got coffee filter. I've got this. This is from a pizza slice, but it's completely clean. This is from a gallery thing in my town. Then this was from some sort of a early learning center. Look how beautiful that is. It's perfect. I'm going to use that. And then there's some catalogs like this that I can use, and then I've got a lot of, look at these magazine pages, all these colors, beautiful. More magazine pages. Look at this dude, you know, why not? Magazine pages. Then I've got tissue paper, I think will look cool in there. And then I've got envelope. And then there's this is from a travel agent, and there's some more painty papers. And you know, this is, I was cleaning my brushes onto this when I was doing a project, so I keep all that sort of stuff. So this is what I'm going to use. And now what I'll do is I will start to sort of see, let's have a look. So I decided that I want my pages sticking out down the bottom, side, and up the top. I don't want my pages to fit completely into within the cover. So this is up to you what you want to do. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some pages and just fold them in half and create my signatures. So I might speed this process up, and then I'll come back and we'll do a signature together. So I'm just going to get everything ready. Okay, so I have decided on my pages and I've folded them. So I'm just going to start placing them into signatures, and then I will decide what I need to rip. So for example, let me see this one. I really want this one to stick out, but I don't want the straight edges. So I'm just going to rip for that ripped look. So maybe I want this to be my first page. So what I'm doing here is I will use one, I want to have one sort of clear page, and then a really colorful page, and then something clear that I can work on, and then a really colorful one. So I wouldn't put them together like this. That's just me. You know, I want to break them up. All the pages full of stuff, you know, break them up a little. And then, you know, I want to have some pockets here and there. So keep in mind the junk journal that you are making, you will be sticking things on, because you can't write on something like this. You'll be gluing a lot of things on, you'll be embellishing. So you want to leave enough space for your journal to grow, unless you want to have a crocodile mouth journal, which is perfectly fine. I love those types of journals. But let's see, so far I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I think I'll keep going for a little bit longer. Okay, I'm going to start. I think I've got 13 so far. So I'm going to start on my next signature, and then I'll come back and put them together and see what else I need to rip and shorten and, you know, that sort of thing. So I want this to be the first page of my second signature. And you see all of these little bits that I'm ripping off. I keep all of this because look at this. If you stitch this on a page, how cool does that look? You know, so I keep all of those bits. Okay, so in this signature I've got 15 pages, and in this signature just want to add 2 more pages here. So one here. So now I've got 14, and I just want to add 1 more. I think I'm going to add this one. Oh, it's already got that one. I want to have 2 of these, so I'm going to add this here and take one out from here. let's say, take this one out, and I'm going to put it somewhere here. Okay, I have got 15 pages in each signature, which gives me it gives me 30 pages that are folded, which gives me 120 sides. So now I just want to check. This is totally up to you. If you don't like bits hanging out, you can obviously make a larger cover, or you can trim down your papers to fit within the cover. But because we're making a junk journal, I just really wanted to have bits and pieces sticking out, so then I can add embellishments and all of that and make it look really, really exciting and pretty. I just wanted to show you these bits and pieces because I can't make this into a signature. I'm going to be gluing this on later on, so you know, something like this, so it's sticking out. This might not be here, you know, so I'm going to bind, what I'm trying to say is I'm going to bind it in as it is, and then as I'm working with it, then I might be trimming down these bits and just making it into what it will be once it's done. So at the moment I'm just deciding to leave it like this, and then these things that I've got, I'm going to be adding them into the journal, you know, when I start working in the journal. So like this coffee filter, I might use it as a pocket, and this pizza, is it a, yeah, I might add this later on. So this is just the bare bones, really, adding these junky pages into a journal, and then the play begins. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bind this journal. If you want to add your tassel now, you can do that, but I think I'm going to do it after it's bound, and then, you know, decide what sort of thing I want to do for the spine. And then after this is bound as well, I'm going to glue on the bookmark that we made together as well. So let's do the next step, which is the binding. Let's bind this book. So it's a junk journal. I'm just using a scrap piece of paper, and I'm not going to be overly precise with this because it's a junk journal and doesn't have to be precise. So I'm just going to find my middle in my paper here. So that's my middle. I'll mark the top so I know later during binding. And so now I want to find the middle of the signature approximately. So let's say this is approximately the middle. And then I will mark, I'm not measuring anything, I want one hole here, one hole here. So that's my template. So now I need to mark these holes because I have two signatures. I need to mark them onto my spine, punch holes, and then I need to punch holes in my signatures. Just want to protect my desk. And now what I'm going to do is try and be as precise as I can. I need to have two lines here where I'm going to punch the holes because I have two signatures, and I want them to be equally spaced. So let's see. So I just marked two lines where I think that will be equally spaced, and I'm going to align my piece of paper and then find approximately the middle. I'm trying to see where the approximate middle is. You, by all means, you can measure this, but I usually do, but for this journal I will not. And now I'm marking where the holes will be, and now I want to do the same. Okay, we've got it here, here, and here. So now I'm using my pokey tool and I'm punching the holes where I've marked them. So I'm doing a 3 pamphlet stitch. Can you see the holes? I've got 2 there, 2 there, 2 there. They look evenly spaced from this edge, you know, to that edge. So that's the sort of thing I'm looking at. All right, so that's done. Now I'm just going to prepare my thread. I'm going to use this embroidery floss. It's a little bit of a different color than the one we used on the cover. And now I'm going measuring about maybe 3 lengths of the spine. Okay, so that's ready to go. Before I can start binding, I need to make the holes in my signatures. So this will be my first signature. I need to sort of center everything, align everything the way that I want it. And I'm quite happy with that. So I'm just going to find the very middle here. This is my middle. And then make sure that top is at that's the top, because it's turned this way, so that's the top. And then so this paper is, as you can see, there's papers that are larger than my template. So I will just try and center it as best as I can. So that looks about right. And now I'm going to puncture the holes. That's one. 2, 3. You can clip these pages with the bulldog clip so they're not moving around. Okay, here we go. So I actually might, now that I've got everything in place, I might just put a clip here to hold all of my papers in place. Okay, so because this is my first signature and I'm starting in the middle hole, I'm going to go into this first hole in the middle. And then I'm going to go up the top and into my next hole. So I'm just going to the top hole. I'm trying to hold all of my pages in, and now I'm going to the bottom hole. Okay, so this part is the tricky part. So now I have to put it through here and then through my signature. So I'm holding this part really tight. Let's see if I can. This is always the trickiest part of binding. So, especially when I'm standing up trying to do a video. So I'll just do it page by page. And now try and tighten everything. Double check. That's looking nice and straight. Okay, you don't want it too tight, you don't want it too loose, we don't want any pages moving and wiggling, so somewhat tight. And I just want to have one strand on this side and one strand on this side of this middle strand, so that I can tie a knot over the top, a bow, a knot, or you can leave them long and have little things hanging off. Okay, so that's my first signature done. Okay, now let's do the second signature. So I need to somewhat center everything and make sure my template is facing the right way. So that's the top, good. Get it all nice and snuggly in there. Oh. And for this one, I'm going to clip the pages, and then they're going to get in my way, but here we go. don't sew your template in. Okay, so starting in the middle. In the middle, then we go up the top hole. That was much easier when the pages are held in with clips. And now let's go down here into the bottom hole. And now the tricky part, which is, so I'm holding this quite tight, moving it out of the way, and let's see if it's going to work first way. Probably not, because it never does, but who knows. No, I can't get it through without damaging all the pages. So what I'm going to do is, I might do it page by page. So now I just need to tighten everything, make sure there is not too much wiggling of the pages, but I don't want it too tight because then the pages can't sit flat. Okay, so I've got strands on both sides, and I'm going to tie a bow. Okay, so before I continue with anything else with my journal, I want to add a little tassel up the top, and I want to glue my book plate here, and then I can start playing in the journal. So the next step is adding the tassel. Let's do that. Okay, I'm going to do the tassel just because I said I'll do the tassel next, but here I've got glued the book plate on, so I'll do that next. So you can just use whatever you have. You know, I have this little bag of bits and pieces, so I'm going to use this cord. I just choose an approximate length like that. Okay, and then fold it in half again. So now I have four strands. See, you can have however many you want. I'm just going to do 4 strands. So I'm going to go through, just through the hole here, the hole that we've done, just there. See, let me lay it flat, and now you've got this situation going on, right? So I like my tassel to be able to move, you know, you want to be able to move it out of the way, because it will be in your way if you have chunky things on your spine, such as large beads or buttons or that sort of thing. It'll be in your way. So what I did here is I just tied a knot, but I left all this space up here, and that gives me enough sort of movement of the tassel so that I can move it out of the way. Okay, so I'm just going to use some of the beads I've got from a broken necklace, so they all sort of correspond, and then I just added these colors because they go well with the pages that I chose. If you want to be real junky and you don't have any broken necklaces and things like that, you can make your own beads. So these are the beads that I made from magazine pages and book, you know, whatever I had, catalogs, you know, all that sort of stuff. So you can go ahead and do that if you prefer. There's plenty of tutorials on YouTube on how to make these beads, but for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to pop some beads on. So what I'm going to do is each time I put a bead on, I'm going to tie a knot so that all the beads are spaced, you know, so they're not all sort of coming down to the end down here. So that's why I'm tying a knot, so that they can be spaced like that. Okay, so I've added a little tassel here. I've got some yellow going on to go with, you know, the look. I may or may not trim these down. I'm going to leave them for now because I feel like maybe if I put some gold beads right at the end, they will look really nice. So now you have this that if you're not able to move it out of the way, it will be completely in your way when you're trying to journal, because they're just there and your journal can't lay flat. So being able to move them out of the way, perfect. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is, you know, it's all coming together. So the next thing I'm going to do is glue this on. So now I just need to decide, like, do I want it in the middle or do I want it up the top? For now, I think the middle looks good, but who knows what I'll decide to do with the cover as I'm playing with my journal. So I'm going to put it up the top because I just feel like that's where it belongs. Okay, so that needs to dry. I think I'm going to just show you my personal journal that I made. This is just, I haven't started, you know, now is the time to go and play in your journal because it is now bound and ready to go. Our last step was to add tassel and beads to the spine and glue the book plate, and then you start playing. So I just wanted to show you what I've done in my journal. So I've done this journal before making this one, and I already started working in it, so I'll just show you the things that I've added. And this is not, obviously it's not finished, I've just started. I'll still be adding more stuff to it, like this I'm going to change. I'll have something different hanging here. It's just, you know, every day I sit down and I do a little something in the journal. So like, for example, I've got this little postage stamp tab here, and I'm going to attach a bulb pin, and I'll attach maybe a little charm hanging there. Then here's an envelope. This is just a flower that I drew and then, you know, made a little cluster. I've got some washi tape. This is actually a pocket, so this comes out. These are some inks that I used, and then I wrote at the, it's like a journaling card. I wrote on the back. So, you know, this, I mean, you sit down and you do whatever you feel like doing, you know. This is the fun part. So here I've got one of these. I just covered it with a doily, and then as you can see here, I've got some bling down the sides here. Then there's a little envelope. I have a tutorial on making these little flip down envelopes that you can write on. And then there's a little tag behind, and then there's a little tag over here with some tassels. So I have just really, you know, started. I've added this wool, what's it called, wool tape, I'm not sure what it's called, but I glued that down, glued this down like a little title book plate kind of thing. And I did this, I want to be wild, beautiful and free, just like the sea. So I sit down every day. This is a little bit of a leftover from this, when I was cutting this part down. So I put it there as a little tab. I've glued down this little piece of paper on an unusable page. So pages like these, you know, you can't write on this. So I would glue something on top, if you're not going to do something interesting with the image, which you can do as well. Then I glued some more. This is left over from stickers, and so I've glued that down here so I can write in there. What else did I do? So just, you know, when I have leftovers, I glued them down. And then I haven't had an opportunity to work in this journal much. There's, as you can see, there's all different types of papers that I can play with. Oh yes, I glued this list down, and then I wanted to write down, don't forget to have fun, to laugh, often to play, to enjoy life, etc, etc, etc. So sometimes I put little notes here so that when I go into my journal, I know what I want to write about, or you know, just like little prompts from myself. And then I glued this. Actually came off of my daughter's shoe, so in my journal it went. And some more of that sticker paper. This is an envelope and it's going to serve as a pocket, so I'll put something in here as well. I'm thinking of maybe doing like a little journal with me series where I will actually sit down and journal in this junk journal. So it'll be junk journal with me series. So here's a little belly band with a piece of paper that I can write on, you know. So whenever I have from projects, I have bits and pieces like, you know, these little bits and pieces. I can go in and I can decorate my journal. This also came off of my daughter's shoe. Then this is a catalog, and I just covered it up here with some paper ribbon, and then I glued down this stitched little card so it can give me place for journaling. So I thought maybe it would be fun if we can do one together, and maybe if I can, actually, you know what, should we do one now? Or maybe we'll do, I think we should do this one, because this isn't looking finished to me. So maybe I can decorate this somehow so that it looks nice. So I don't like this sticking out. So I'm going to do that now. So a little tag to go in, and I can come back and decorate that later. I can write something on it. And then now I want something in my little pocket. So I just had this in my stash, just a little booklet I made with leftover scrapbook paper, so I can have that sitting in there. And then also here I've made this into a pocket so I can have a little tag in there or a piece of paper to write. I would want to decorate, but I'll come back to this. We've got an envelope, a little pocket here. I can put all of my little bits and pieces that I have, you know, like these I'm going to use somewhere in the journal. So I can have, this can be my little ephemera keeping, you know, place. Really, sometimes I get overwhelmed with all of the things that I can do. Like just this here is not finished yet because there's so much more that I can add to it. I could go on forever trying to decorate this journal, and there's hours and hours of fun to be had in this journal. So I hope that you guys feel inspired by this project. I hope that you feel the urge to go and make something of your own, to make a creation of your own. Just looking at these two journals, I feel like there's so much more fun stuff that I can do, like decorating the book plate, and even, you know, adding some hand stitching here and there. And, you know, this is just the beginning, really. So I had an idea of maybe doing like a junk journal with me video every now and again. Is that something that you guys would be interested in? If it is, please let me know. Let me know what you think about the project in general. I will put these instructions side by side now so that you can take screenshots if you like. As I'm doing that, I would like to thank you so much for stopping by and having a look at this video. I hope that you go and you have a look at Barbara's video. So all of the links are down below. So that's the first 10 steps right there. And then let's do the next. So we've got then this one, 11 to 20. Okay, I read all of my comments. Please, guys, let me know what you think of this. It means so much to me. And thank you for being here. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.